Hello. One of the central studies of exopolitics is that of extraterrestrial governance councils, and that's a governance function in our populated and organized multiverse. And it is a rare occasion, a very meaningful occasion, when we're able to interact with and bring to you direct representatives of and people who are chosen and who have direct communication with extraterrestrial governance councils. In this case, the person that will be speaking with over a series of interviews, who's asked that his human identity remain anonymous, although his Andromedan identity given by the Andromedan Council is Tolec, T-O-L-E-C. He'll be describing what the Andromedan Council is and the relations that he has with it. But the essential message that we'll be exploring in these series of interviews is a very important one. What the Andromedan Council says to us are three things. Number one, that the war with the Orion Grey and Draco reptilian extraterrestrials has been won. Number two, that the Earth is now in the process of dimensional shift to a new light-filled fourth dimension. And number three, that a period of Earth changes with associated large celestial bodies is coming. And Tolec will be exploring all of these and the communications that he has had and continues to have with the Andromeda Council with us in these extraordinary and exclusive interviews. What I've learned about Tolec in my conversations with him, he's a very warm and a cordial, an intelligent, a balanced person. He has more than 20 years of experience in the computer software industry, where he's worked with the exception of programming and development. All of the knowledge and some of the information that he's sharing with us, he's learned from the Andromeda Council. And what I found when we first came together was that this information, and I'll be establishing this in a series of Examiner articles that will accompany these interviews, this information is congruent with independent sources of scientists, independent scientific sources regarding astronomical developments, specifically the energy fields, the photon band that we're entering, different celestial bodies, including the newly discovered dwarf star or gaseous planet Tyche that is coming into the solar system. Tolec will share with us his first extraterrestrial contact that occurred south of Tucson, Arizona, starting in 1993, which were a series of 3 meetings and 3 flights with an extraterrestrial entity, a man named Zoltar, Z-O-L-T-A-R. That's his Andromedan name. Tolec says he has had virtually no contact with Zoltar again until September of 2010, when these contacts resumed, as we'll see, in a very timely way because of the developments that are occurring now. Tolec, welcome to our program.
Hi, Alfred. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's rare that I have an opportunity to go over this information in depth, so it's fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, tell me, what was your first experience with Zoltar, this Andromedan person, and if you could explain a bit about him and how that experience connects to what you're doing now and your ongoing communications with various members of the Andromeda Council. And what is the Andromeda Council? That's a lot of questions, but I think you can unfold it for us.
Sure. I think the best way to start is by letting you know that when I first met him, I didn't have any knowledge of the Andromeda Council, none whatsoever. I received a communique, I guess internally. Some definitions here. Internally would mean not necessarily through my human physical ears, but telepathically. I think that's the best way to say it. I received telepathic, an invite, if you will, to head south of Tucson, get on the highway, head south of Tucson, go a couple of exits past the San Javier mission, and that would be spelled Xavier, and pull off into the desert, and I would meet him. And in fact, I did. I met him. I drove down there 3 times, late at night, early in the morning, kind of like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, which from what I understand seems to be not only optimal spiritual communication time, but optimal ET time. And I believe it was like in the course of over about a week and a half, late summer 1993, I took these 3 trips, and each time, and I've only told this story a couple of times, but each time when I got there, including the first time, it was interesting for me that when I finally pulled the car off the exit and went through this little patch, this area of desert, I don't know, probably about 2/3 of a mile into the desert. And I came over like this last ridge, and I saw this round-shaped craft, what people might call a disc, sitting there, and there's Zoltar standing there in his outfit, waving his hand. I recognized his face right away. He's like, "Come on over." He's like, yeah, I'm coming, hang on. So I closed the door in the vehicle and locked it up, and I didn't know why, but I instantly recognized his face. So that's something that's always puzzled me, but in any case, there were, before he got on his craft, he held out his hand and he said, "Here, you got to take one of these." I said, "What's that?" He said, It's a blue pill." I'm like, "Yeah, I can see that." He said, "Well, you got to take it." And I said, "All right, fine." I said, "Why am I taking it?" He said, "Because we need to have your body, your human body, be able to withstand the travel, this flight, the conditions of flight, A, and B, in order for you in this human body to go back in time, you got to take this blue pill." I said, "Oh, so we're not only taking a trip, we're going back in time." He said, "Yeah, you're going to take the pill." I'm like, "Yeah, fine." So we get in the craft, off we go. Now, I don't know how he did what he did, but we apparently went back to the mid-1800s, I want to say 1850-ish, 1860-ish in time. Rural United States, Kentucky, West Virginia, the hills of Virginia, somewhere in there. And on all 3 trips, we observed a family, a small family, living out in the wilderness, eking out a tough life. Mom, dad, and a couple of children. And we observed them. They couldn't, I'll borrow a term from Star Trek, the ship was cloaked. So they wouldn't be able to look up and see it. They wouldn't see that it was there. And on all 3 trips, we observed this family doing their thing, going about their daily lives. I'll get to the reason why in a moment. So trip 1, I come back. I thank him for the ride and the visit, and I come back home. Trip 2, I do the same thing. Trip 3, 2 things happen. The third thing is that in the process of watching this family, I observed a fire on the property. And one of their buildings, I think, was the barn. The barn burned down, and the daughter lost her life. I think the daughter was 4 or 5 years old, and I think, like a lot of families, of course, she was the jewel of the father's existence, and she was his favorite. And it was a difficult experience for me to watch all of this happen. Of course, it was difficult to watch this family have this experience. And I need to backtrack for a moment. I think that was the second trip, not the third. But in any case, the result of these experiences, I asked Zoltar, why this set of experiences, why this family, why this period of time? And his answer was, in having this human life, humans have an incredible broad range of emotion, and all of the different contexts that emotion has, including deep compassion and deep sorrow. And we who live in the fourth dimension, because he's a fourth dimensional being, he's never had an Earth life, and we can get into dissecting what it means to be a fourth dimensional person, but I'll let you take that lead later on. So we don't have this broad range of emotions, and we don't experience death like you do. We just don't. And so I wanted to experience that vicariously through you. I wanted to watch you and experience you while you watched this set of experiences that this family was having. And it was, I consider myself to be a pretty normal person, a pretty normal guy. And it was, I'll tell you, it was difficult to watch that experience of that family losing their daughter and their child. And that was the reason why he chose that set of experiences for me. It was so that he and they, as a culture, as fourth dimensional people, could have a better grasp on what it's like to be a human and to have the full range of emotions that we do. Interestingly enough, at the end of the last trip, he said, okay, I'm going to give you a choice. You can stay here in this dimension and be a guide for these people, be a kind of a mentor. And if you want to do that, initially, I've got to give you this red pill. It kind of facilitates the transformation of your temporarily fourth dimensional body into a complete fourth dimensional person. I imagine they would have had to do some other things, but it provides a temporary shift. That's the same reason for the blue pill. The blue pill provides a temporary shift from third dimensional person to fourth dimensional person. So he said, A, you can take the red pill and become a fourth dimensional guide for these people, a mentor in some ways. Or B, you can take what is it? That's the red pill. Or you can take the pink pill that you've always taken to go back home. Because I would take the blue pill to take the trip, and to come back to Earth, I would take a pink pill to have a third dimensional existence again. And I guess it took the pink pill because I'm here. I'm still living this third dimensional life many years later in 2011. And I guess if I had taken the red pill, I wouldn't be here today. I don't know what would have happened after taking the red pill because I'm still here. But that's the totality of that particular experience. I know there's a lot there. You could probably do a whole interview on that particular experience. But
no, right. Now you mentioned that that then in September of 2010, that is,
Yeah, essentially last year.
yeah, the communications suddenly pick up again. And this is Zoltar again that comes back to you?
Sure. Thanks for bringing me back to center. I appreciate it. Absolutely, absolutely. And the way that it happened was, and I'll fill in the blanks just a little bit. I didn't have any physical contact experience, as that one was back in 1993. I didn't have any physical contact experience between 93 and September 2010. I did have an interest in this subject matter. I had some experiences that I couldn't rationally explain. I had some dreams. I had some visual, some if you will, some visual snapshots in the dream state, and maybe other subtle indicators that would indicate some kind of cosmic connection. But you're right. No physical contact between 93 and September 2010. And then a couple of months before that, there was something that happened that I was given sort of a wake-up call, and it was twice. There were some craft images in the sky overhead of where I was, and the whole sky was covered with clouds, and they seemed to be moving west to east. And then there were these two craft that were parked, that were in the shape of clouds that had a very clear, defined rim, if you will. There were like two or three of them. They were large. And they weren't, so you have this whole sky moving west to east at like, I don't know, 7 to 10 knots. And these two clouds, craft shaped, just kind of parked there. And I looked up and I said, these don't quite look like the other clouds in the sky. Another time, I looked up about, I don't know, 3 months later, and there was a series of clouds that was actually in the shape of a face. And I heard this, hey. Now, keep in mind, this is not through my ears. This is inside my head, which I think some people would call telepathy. And I said, excuse me? He goes, hey, I'm trying to get your attention. So I look up in the sky, and it's getting towards sunset, and I look up, and there is this shape of clouds, and you've got some sunset colorings, it's a little orange and red, and there's an image of a man's face, which is decidedly Native American. He would almost look like a Comanche warrior. You know, it would have the band of cloth across the forehead in various colors. And I said, oh, okay, all right, I see you now. You're trying to get me? Yes, I'm trying to get your attention. All right, hi, how are you? And he just, whatever technological power that he had up on his craft, he was able to take these clouds and form them into his face. I'm like, yeah, oh, hey, okay, nice to see you. I did not know that the same person of Zoltar in 1993 was the same person that I would start communicating with in September of last year. Now, I know that's a long story, and people might not put a lot of interest in it, but that's kind of how it all came together. And it was only in later conversations, after that first conversation in September, did I learn that his name is Zoltar. It's a given public name. It defines his role. It means commander, and he is the commander of a craft which any of us might call a biosphere, or like a small planetoid. It's about the size of Pluto. It's artificially made, and when they staffed this craft, there were about 5,000 crew members in it. There are about 50,000 now. What is the relevance to the Andromeda Council? many of the Andromeda Council meetings are held on this craft. And he happens to be the guy in charge of all the operations people and all of his executive staff, and he's in charge of a lot of people. That's his role. He's not specifically a member of the Andromeda Council. There are people that I do talk to that are members of the Andromeda Council. And with that little dissertation, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the craft, and you mentioned the Andromeda Council. Why don't we go in the direction of describing what the Andromeda Council is?
Okay.
That you've been told.
The Andromeda Council is a collective of 12 contributing members from different parts of the universe. Generally, they come from different star systems, and each star system has a member planet. And I'll call up the website as an example. From the star system Arcturus, the senior planet that's represented is Ptola. From the star system Antares, the senior planet is Nicote. From Procyon, it's Cana. And there are many others. There are a total of 12 of them. If you would, like any political body, it has a senior chaired member. And I have the names of each of the members. The person that is, if you will, the representative from that star system from that particular planet. There's also a non-voting chairman, and his public name is Darka. There's also a non-voting vice chairwoman, and her public name is Tanya. And they, if you will, they like any other board, they manage the meetings. This Andromeda Council also has a number of sub-councils or advisory boards, and there are 13 of those. And they cover a whole variety of different topics from, as an example, there's a Star System Membership Review Board, there's an Exobiology Galaxy Advisory Board, and what's interesting about that one, and actually these other 13, is that except for the Exobiology Galaxy Advisory Board and the Xenobiology Galaxy Advisory Board, where those two advisory council members are chaired by the same person that happens to have a seat on the Andromeda Council. The other 11, there are star systems and planets that are on the Andromeda Council but don't have senior member seats. And of those other 11 advisory council board positions, people come from different star systems other than the 12 senior chaired seats. I hope I explained that in a fashion that makes sense.
Now,
go ahead.
Just what is the relationship between the Andromeda Council and the Milky Way galaxy?
I can tell you in general about its purpose. And I once had somebody ask me a question recently, and they said, well, does the Andromeda Council have a military? And I said, geez, no, not really. And in this respect, it's what they do is, when things, as an expression of speech, when things are going south, when there are some people on a planet or in a star system are having some real problems, and we'll get into this later, as an example on Earth, with the problems that Earth has had with greys and reptilians. When things get so bad that somebody needs some help, they will step in. But things have got to get really, really bad.
Right,
I guess.
I guess I know that my question wasn't meant to get that far ahead of us. Most of the
Sure.
star systems, like the ones that you mentioned, like the Pleiades, are in the Milky Way galaxy.
Okay.
So why wouldn't this be called the Milky Way Galactic Federation rather than the Andromeda Council,
Okay.
since most of the star systems in it are not in the Andromeda galaxy, but in the Milky Way galaxy? I
Okay.
guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
All right. My apology for misunderstanding. I can tell you this, though I can't say for sure. The genesis of this council, it was probably organized originally by people and by star systems that are in the Andromeda. Let me back up a moment. If we would stand here on Earth and look up in the night sky,
Right.
we would see an area of space called, and there are others, of course. There are other constellations, just like there's a constellation called Pleiades. Well, we would look up on the night sky and see a constellation called Andromeda.
Right.
There are star systems and there are planets in the Andromeda constellation.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay?
Yeah.
Also, inside this area of space called the Andromeda constellation is the Andromeda galaxy.
Okay.
From our perspective, standing on this planet looking into space, you would actually see as one of the celestial entities the Andromeda galaxy in that part of space.
Right.
Now, in conclusion, at least about this topic, as an example, the non-voting chairman of the Andromeda Council, he happens to be from the star system Zenithal, the planet Tishay, in the Andromeda galaxy.
Okay.
As a comparison, Vice Chairwoman Tanya, who's from the star system Mirak and the planet Tiriel, that star system happens to sit within the greater area of space called the Andromeda constellation.
Right.
But it's still in the Milky Way galaxy. So
okay.
There's some crossover.
Crossover. Now, I noticed that you made a reference to the website where people can begin to consult about this information, and I wondered if you could give the location of that website.
Sure. Like any website, it begins with www.andromedacouncil.com. So AndromedaCouncil, AndromedACouncil.com. Very simple.
Now, what's the source of the information on that website?
Good question. All of the information comes from 5 people that I have ongoing contact with. Zoltar, who is the commander of the biosphere, where many of the Andromeda Council meetings are held.
And that's the large artificial planetoid that has 50,000 people on it.
Right, there are 50,000 crew members. Well, there were originally 5,000 crew members and their families. There are now 50,000 crew members and their families. And I'll give some relevance here in terms of size. It's gotten that large because of these changes happening not only to Earth, but to our solar system, and the clock's ticking. You know, as evidenced by an earthquake on the East Coast, centered in Virginia, the earthquake out in the ocean in Japan. They told me decidedly that these are not simple expressions of Earth. These expressions of Earth are happening because we as a planet, and we as a solar system are already touching this outer edge of this band of faster energy. Now, to get back to your question, Chairman Durka, Vice Chairwoman Tanya, okay, there's a spiritual mentor. He's what I would call a sage. Tonka, I've had communication with him. The Chief Medical Council, Chief Medical Executive for that biosphere. Azar, let's see, the head of defense, actually. His name is Baltar. 5 people. And depending on the subject matter, I will communicate with one of them or 2 or 3 of them. And I'll learn what I learn, again, depending on the subject matter. And yes, everything that I've learned in detail comes from all of them.
All of them. And you as you described to me in some of the sort of preparatory interviews that we've had, you have 5 different ways of communication, one of which is telepathy, another was the dream state. Perhaps could you describe those, just briefly, those 5 different ways of communication, apart from the 1993, which was face-to-face with Zoltar, and then time travel back to 1993.
Right.
I mean, to the 1850s.
Right. You're right. There's a lot of it that is telepathic, and I don't know how it happens. I'm not able to explain it, except that it is. There's a lot. If you speak with other people that are having experiences similar to me, I think one of the things that you'll learn is that a lot of people receive what they receive through imagery of some type. Whether it's, I call it a vision, sort of, it takes as long as the snap of a finger or maybe a little bit longer. You get flashes. And so it's easy for them as fourth-dimensional beings to communicate using imagery as well as talking. So I'll receive images, and they'll also communicate to me in the dream state. A lot of my own experiences in terms of the information and knowing what I know, and this may be a stretch, but it's happening to me, so I'll tell the story. It's not a long story.
Okay.
As an example, all of us, we get through our workday, we have dinner with our families, and maybe watch some television, or read a book, and we go to bed at night. So, as with anybody else, I'll go to bed at night. My human 3D body is sleeping. And I've lost track of the number of meetings that I've had face-to-face with Zoltar and Tonka and Chairman Tartai, Vice Chairwoman Tanya, that I've had in meetings up on the biosphere, but my body's not there. My spiritual essence is there. And I wake up in the morning and I have a complete memory of what I've experienced, the meetings I was in, who I talked to. Actually, remember one time where at the end of a meeting, and I can still see this image in my mind, there were probably 60 or 70 of us, and we were standing there kind of like in this quarter moon circle, the shape of a quarter moon, all waiting for, if you will, the photographer to get his stuff together to take a picture of all of us. There apparently had been a large gathering of a number of people, and we were all standing at the front edge of this room waiting for this guy to get his act together to take a picture of all of us. So I've been to this planetoid apparently a number of times for a number of meetings, and that's how I gained a lot of this knowledge. But in my original spirit essence, my spiritual body, it's about the best way I can describe it. Not not my 3D human physical form.
Right. So, right. So it would be that telepathy in the dream state, and this form of essential body travel to that.
Travel.
Yeah.
Sure.
To that area and interaction there. Well, now the council then picks up communication with you around starting in September of 2010. And one of the things that you learn about is their decision, which happened sometime earlier, to step in and help Earth to engage in 9 years of a successful war in space, and the reasons for this war and the results of the war. Could you lead us through that? Because that is quite a story, and it's very good news for the people of Earth.
Sure, certainly. And I'll get into as much detail as you'd like.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is really to report the detail that you've been told.
Okay.
So that, yeah.
Sure. I'm not exactly sure of when this particular meeting happened, but let's call it 12 years ago, approximately, of Earth time, somewhere around there. There was, as they have meetings, there was a complete meeting of the Andromeda Council senior members, the 12 chaired senior members. I don't know how many other people sat in, but essentially they were having a discussion about what was going on planet Earth, and the fact that reptilians and greys, and I can get into that as much as you want, had been manipulating, using, abusing the people of Earth for a long, long time. That's one aspect of it.
These are the Orion-based greys and the Draco reptilians.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. There's a race of reptilian beings, which of course, like any species, has a hierarchy of different branches. Just like we have, as an example, different types of lizards on this planet. You have different types of reptilians, from what I've learned. But yes, reptilians from the Alpha Draconis star system. And there was an alliance with greys who originated, from what I understand, originally in the Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 star systems. And these guys hadn't been back to Zeta Reticuli in a long, long time, thousands and thousands of years. So they essentially had created their own new, if you will, sub-race, because they hadn't been home in a long, long time. And there, from what I understand, and people, there are a lot of people who have had interaction with greys. A lot of it hasn't been good on this planet. But from what I understand, they're very scientific, they're very technical, and through their own evolution, they, interestingly enough, they bred out emotion. They've completely bred out emotion. They become completely scientific and intellectual beings. A. B. They've also interbred so much that their race is dying. And one of the reasons that they've been messing with the people on Earth, and I've heard of these things. I don't have any first-hand knowledge or experience, but I've certainly heard of men being taken in ships women being taken in ships, eggs, ova being taken, women who've been pregnant, their babies have been taken. There apparently has been an agenda by the Greys to take human seed, human eggs, to crossbreed with their own people to try to extend the life of their race. That's as much as I know about this topic. But when you look at how they've done it, however we would define the words for the common good or spiritual law, it's totally against any way that you or I would treat our friends or relatives or people we care about. It's just not the way. What they do and what they've done.
It's against the quote law of non-intervention.
Absolutely. From that perspective alone, it's absolutely against the law of non-intervention. So thanks for bringing me back to center. In any case, between their actions as a species interfering with people on Earth, and between what the reptilians have done over the course of years, which includes, from what I understand, I don't know how they've done it, but I understand that they have technology whereby they've beamed frequencies from the Mars has a moon called Phobos. From what I understand, there was this, if you will, large-scale generator on Phobos, which was generating a highly agitating negative frequency. And it's been doing it on an ongoing basis toward planet Earth for years. It's been happening, and the same thing has happened from the moon as well. I understand that the moon has been a place of many, many bases of both different varieties of the Greys as well as the reptilians. And I also understand the reptilians not only come from Alpha Draconis, but they also come from Hydra. And of course, this version of Greys comes from Orion. In any case, the short version of the story is there was a decision made by the people of the Andromeda Council that because of this abuse of the people of planet Earth, A, and B, if this abuse were allowed to continue and the Draco reptilians and Greys were allowed to manage and abuse this planet and take greater control of it, sometime in the future, because the people of the Andromeda Council in the fourth and in the fifth and sixth dimensions have the ability to look at time and go back and forward in time, as you've heard in our conversation. They've been able to look down the time track 300 some odd years and say, if we let this situation continue, there are going to be some situations that are going to come about that will be of severe harm to not only the people of Earth, but to many people across this universe. There's a definite cause and effect, apparently, from what happens not on one planet to all throughout space. And I don't know what these circumstances are that would come about, but they basically said, A, these people have been abused for way too long, and it's beyond the realm of reason that anybody would allow this to continue to happen. B, if we do allow it to continue to happen, we're all going to be affected by this circumstance, and it all has to do with Earth, Mars, Mars moon, and Earth's moon. So you know what? We're gonna breach the normal law of non-intervention. We're gonna step in and we're gonna help these people. That's the long version of the story, and it would be typically called the Prime Directive, as most of us have come to know this law. And apparently, the people from Procyon, the Procyon star system, had just finished fighting, if you will, fighting a war and freeing themselves from the control and the abuse of the Greys and reptilians. And so, as a member of the Andromeda Council, they provided their knowledge, their expertise, and some of the tactics that they used to help defeat the Greys and Reptilians, and that was of great help, believe me. I know that.
Right. So now, because we've been following the Grey and Reptilian War through some of the whistleblowers, and through some of the secret treaties, which go back by one report to 1934, the first Grey Treaty with the U.S. administration of Franklin Roosevelt. When did the Andromeda Council inform you when the war was won, kind of D-Day or VE Day or whatever?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure of the specific day, but I can tell you that based on conversations that I was having with them in December of 2010, January, they being my contacts, and my contacts being the chairman, the vice chairwoman, certainly Zoltar, they were exhausted. Everybody had been pushing. There had been a final push to finally beat these guys. And approximately, I want to say the end of January, beginning of February, at least.
Of this year.
Right, of 2011.
Right.
That, quote unquote, this war that had been going on in space, and many times kind of just outside of Earth space, that the war out in space was done. It was finished. And more importantly, any of, you have used this term before, any of the bad guys, meaning any of the reptilians, any of the Greys aligned with them, working together collaboratively on bases on the moon, on bases on Mars, certainly on Phobos and this negative energy generating plant. The negative energy generating plant has been destroyed, and all of the people that were on these bases are gone. And this is worth bringing up because it tells the difference between what might be considered a military council as compared to somebody who steps in only when the need for assistance is real. What I've been told is so that these guys, the Greys and Reptilians, could no longer abuse the people of Earth, from space at least. Many of them were captured, they were rounded up, a Stargate was open, they were put in a Stargate, it was, if you will, to use the nomenclature, it was dialed up, they were put in a Stargate, and they were sent to the far reaches of the outside of the universe, where they could only bother each other and abuse each other and nobody else. There were no war trials, they weren't tried, they weren't convicted, there were no executions. They were simply rounded up and shipped out to the far reaches of the universe. And they can abuse each other from this time forward. And that's where the war is over. In that terms of that terminology, yeah, the war is over out in space. But the cleanup is definitely not finished. There are still Greys running around on this planet. And when I mean running around, what I've learned over time is that there are bases both undersea and underground all across this planet. And they're kind of like, I don't know, the best analogy I could give you is, rats underground or moles. They're deep underground, and there are bases, there are tunnels, and many of them operate underground, and they only come out every once in a while. They certainly come out when they're trying to execute their own agenda.
Now, just to quickly catch up a point of congruence, and that is that there are other prior communications, reported communications with the Andromeda Council or from organized forces within the Andromeda galaxy and or constellation that indicate that they had actually identified a future problem, had gone maybe 350 or so years into the future, had traced it back to Earth, specifically back to Earth, the Moon, and Mars. And so that is why the focus has been now. And so they decided, the Andromeda Council, to intervene in Earth, Moon, and Mars so as to forestall that future event. And that's congruent with the statements that you have said. And
Right.
these are independent sources that were on record and that essentially ceased communicating, interestingly, as of January 2010. So I'm just thinking that perhaps one of the functional reasons for communications having started up with you in September or so 2010 was to ensure that the continuity of these communications. I realize this is speculation, but I just wanted to raise that.
Yeah, you're right, and actually, it's also a little broader than that. I only learned about this within the past month. I'll touch on your point. My words are different, but yes, you're saying you just cited essentially the same situation that I addressed, which is one of the reasons that they intervene is that if we on this planet were allowed to continue on our path as we are today, and the timeline were to exist somewhere 300 years in the future, these problems would come about, these very, very severe problems. And interestingly enough, I don't even know what they are, just that there would be repercussions across the universe that would be so severe that it would adversely affect a lot of other people and a lot of other star systems. So,
Now,
yes, absolutely. That was one of the reasons why they stepped in and intervened. As to timing, here's the piece that I learned, which I found was fascinating. I at some point during my own contacts, I said, "Hey guys, why me?" And they gave me certain answers, and I said, "Okay, well, is there a reason why September of 2010?" And they said, yes. It's sort of like kickoff weekend. Apparently, I and a few other people around the planet, and I don't know the exact numbers. I want to say it's a handful, maybe 5 or 6 at this point in time, that there are 5 or 6 other people, as well as myself, that were all contacted on that weekend to begin a coordinated effort of communication to get this information out. So I don't know who these other 5 or 6 people are. There may be some more, but I decided at the tail end of 2010 that it would make sense to memorialize everything I was learning. And the final form is the website, which went online, I think, the last week of April, first week of May. So the website itself is
of this year.
Right, of this year. It's recent.
Okay, so
that's the broader context of the story.
And one of the principal, we'll be going over this in more depth toward the end of this interview and in subsequent interviews, but one of the essential messages there is that the war is over.
The war is definitely over. And yeah. I've heard, because I have a general interest in certainly the possibility of other intelligent life being in the universe. I've always had this as kind of an interest. As a kid, I watched Star Trek like a lot of people do. So, with that as a backdrop, I've heard other people say, "Oh, well, we're all getting concerned. We're all afraid. Look at all these movies that are coming out. They're going to attack." There's just a lot of information out there that indicates that the extraterrestrials are coming, the ETs are coming. If you look at all the movies that have come out this year alone, if you go back to the autumn of 2010 and including this summer season of major release movies and motion pictures, there's a whole bunch of films on ETs attacking Earth that have come out. And likewise, interestingly enough, there are also people who are speaking out loud. They're saying they're coming, they're going to attack us, there's going to be an attack, or there's going to be a fake attack for some other reasons.
Right.
I can tell you categorically, the war is over. The war in space is over, and what's going on here on this planet is guys who have a job, specific people who come here very quietly on the Andromeda Council, are busy getting rid of whoever greys or reptilians that are left quietly, secretly doing their devious things on this planet. They're taking them off, they're getting rid of them. So I don't, there's no reality that I'm aware of that talks about an attack or an invasion coming. None whatsoever.
Right. So just let's go over that. What we had was a very early warning by space scientist Dr. Werner von Braun on his deathbed, communicated through Dr. Carol Rosin, that the fourth card after the collapse of the War on Terror and the false war against the asteroids would be a false flag extraterrestrial war to try and keep the militarization of the planet going, the weaponization of space, all of the war agendas going here. And kind of those are the symptoms of the gray reptilian occupation of the planet. And we see things like even Paul Krugman, the economist, saying what we need is a false flag ET invasion to get the economy going again. We have, as you mentioned, all sorts of motion pictures.
There was
why? Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but just, I think it was yesterday or the day before, a reporter said the same thing.
Yeah.
The thing that we, the thing that we need to pick us economically would be to have ET invade us, and then that would be a good reason to have a war economy, and we could start producing a whole bunch of things again. And I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. Based on a longer academic report, which is, let's get the academic report to tell us why we should go to war. So why is it that the Andromeda Council has communicated to you to say that we are not going to have a false flag attack? What is it that they have said, and what reasons have they given that the false flag attack is not going to take place?
Okay. Interesting question. I'll tell you what I can tell you, because there certainly might be malevolent ears that are listening that shouldn't have tactical information. So I'm not going to handle it.
Sure. Yeah. We, as they say, loose lips sink ships. We do not want to sink any of the good people's ships.
Right. In general, what they have said is, we, being the Andromeda Council, we are absolutely prepared. We beat them in space. I'm paraphrasing what they've told me. We beat them in space. We're cleaning up the planet, and any possible coordinated, what's being called false flag or fake attack, any possible fake attack, we're ready for. And we'll shut this thing down faster than they can blink their eyes. They being the bad guys. We're not going to allow it. We're not going to let it happen.
Now,
that's what they said.
In conjunction with this, there's the whole question of increased UFO sightings around the world. Some people say that they're holographic projections, some portion of them. Some people say that some portion of actual craft are, in fact, belong to the good guys, some to the bad guys, some to the U.S. rather to the earthly cabal-based stuff,
Sure.
and that some of this might be leading up to trying to prepare the people of Earth for a forthcoming, quote, false flag invasion. Could you lead us through the information that the Andromeda Council has told you about this?
Sure. I think, as in any journalistic endeavor, which you're doing right now, there are appropriate times, just like we're talking about, where it's not always appropriate to talk about tactics or names and places. So, respecting that viewpoint, I can say this. I asked them about a particular set of sightings and the high frequency, the density of sightings over a certain city in the U.S. And here was their explanation, and I'll break it down in percentages. They said, what they're trying to do is put on a visual display, no different than the kind of impact that movies make. Movies are a visual medium. We go to a movie theater, we see a movie, and it puts a visual imprint on us.
Now, sorry, who are the they in this sentence? You said that they are trying to
they are trying to make a visual impact. The they is the remaining greys or reptilians who are basically stuck here on Earth.
Okay.
They're in coordinating a possible attack or coordinating what's been called a fake attack or a false flag attack. As an example, over this one city that's having an unusually high number of sightings, here's the breakdown. Apparently, 65% of the sightings are holographic in nature. So you take a piece of technology, you point it toward the sky, and you project a holographic image of what people would call a UFO or a scout craft. 65% are holographs that are produced by the Greys and Reptilians. And I've actually got a chart, and so that I don't misquote my chart, I want to refer to it. You just give me a moment here. Oops. Okay. All right, here we go. Relying on computer technology. All right, 65% are reptilian and gray. And I'll use an example. Let's say there are 10 craft in the sky, as an example. 65% are reptilian and gray, holographically projected ships. 10% are holographic ships that have been projected by what people call the cabal, or the powers that be, that are humans here on this planet that are working in cooperation with the Greys and Reptilians. So now you've got 75% that are holographic projections. 12% are physical reptilian and gray craft. That's it. 12%. 13% of the remaining total are what people might consider to be clouds or orbs of light. And those would be Andromeda Council based, Andromeda Council flagged, if you will, ships. They would be seen as clouds or orbs of light. So if the number's 13 for Andromeda Council and 12 for the Greys and Reptilians, the Andromeda Council still has them at least matched, and they're monitoring. They know exactly what they're doing. So, it's a long story, but the bottom line is the majority, 3/4 of the ships that people are seeing in the skies in this one area are holographic projections.
Now that leads me to the next question, which is a surprising possible answer, and that is, I was led to believe that you've had some communication from the Andromeda Council that disclosure, extraterrestrial disclosure, is not going to happen? Or did I get that wrong?
Yeah, well, let me address the question. I think it would be incorrect to say that the Andromeda Council said disclosure is not going to happen. In this particular case, the statement of disclosure is not going to happen is my opinion.
Oh, okay.
It's my opinion because why should any government make a bold statement like that and put years of credibility or years of lies, one of the two, out to the public when people who are extraterrestrial are doing the job for them? You know, whether they're good extraterrestrials, some people call them benevolent with a B, like the people from the Andromeda Council and their affiliated planets, or whether they're malevolent, which would be the Greys and the Reptilians. There's certainly enough exposure and enough information out there for people who have an interest, for people who are interested in the subject matter. There's enough information out there that says that there's a strong possibility that intelligent life in one form or another across the universe exists. And there's enough visual representation that the subject matter of do ETs exist or not exist is really irrelevant given what's going on today and what's going to happen in the future. And what's going to happen in the future is, I've been told quite decidedly that there will be, there is a plan in place that's been put into place. It's been done based on a request that there will be scout craft from the Andromeda Council, which will touch down on Earth. Japan was slated first for contact, but the United States, and because of the radiation problems they've had from that March earthquake, the U.S., which was second, is now first in priority. And they're going to quietly touch down, and people from Andromeda Council flagged ships are going to touch down quietly. They're going to get out of the craft, they're going to walk around, they're going to visit with people. So the matter of public disclosure on the part of a government really is going to become irrelevant because ETs will take care of that themselves.
So this is going to be the ships from the Andromeda Council that will quietly begin to land, and the occupants come out and quietly mix with the people.
Right. They'll be, and I asked, just, you'll see it, anybody can see it on the website, on the page called Contact, it's page 3, I believe. There will be people from these 4 star systems in these planets, and I'll just name the planets: Ventra, Nicote, Tolec, and Retal. That human beings of various colors, of various sexes, you know, some 5'10", some 5'11", some 6'2", men and women. I think they're going to be roughly 3 to 4 people per craft will land quietly. This is not going to be a public display. This is not going to be mass sightings over a large city. This is not going to be a negotiation between one government and another. Absolutely not. This is going to be a series of quiet visits. So they're going to land quietly, they're going to land discreetly, and they're going to get out and they're going to walk into suburban communities, and they're going to walk into some cities, and they're going to simply introduce themselves and have conversations with people. That's literally how it'll happen.
This is a very good segue into our next interview in this series of interviews, because there are about 5 minutes left in this segment. And how does this process fit into the subject matter that the Andromeda Council has told you about, which will be the subject matter of our next interview, which is that of, number one, the dimensional shift, and number two, the coming celestial bodies, high energy field, what is called a photon belt or not, and associated Earth changes. How does this contact fit in with that? You know, the various time frames.
Sure. It's a great question, and it's worth exploring, certainly initially, today, and we can get into it in greater depth. But at least for me, when this whole process started for me, this was an exciting story that I was going to be able to participate in firsthand, you know, as I'm doing with you today, so that I could tell other people, hey, listen, they're going to land. The issue of are we alone or are we not alone is going to go away. And they're going to do it in a warm, open, friendly setting, in a warm, open, friendly format. They're going to walk among people, they're going to introduce themselves and say, hey, you on Earth, you're cousins of ours. Your first cousins, your second cousins. We've been out here a long time, you've been on this planet a long time, and you are part of the greater expanse of sentient, intelligent life in this universe. And, you know, it's time for you to graduate, and here's who we are, here's where we're from. Here are some of the planets where Earth humans are originally from. You know, some from Sirius, some from Pleiades. I know if you simply look at the different variety of races on this planet, you get a sense that there's a pretty good chance we didn't all come from the same place. So they're going to introduce themselves. I thought this was going to be the whole story. And little did I realize, as my experience with them evolved, that there's this whole set of changes coming to the solar system and to this planet. So the second part of their story in communicating with the people of Earth is, here's what's going on with your solar system, here's what's going on with your planet. We're filling in the gaps for you so that you understand, and we're here to help. That's the topical covering of the subject matter. You know, we're here to help, and there are a lot of things that we're going to cover, and you know, the bottom line is you're not alone, you've never been alone.
And so I take it that this period of informal contact will not be opposed or resisted by, say, if they start with the United States, will it be in cooperation with the government? Is the government irrelevant? You know, is it, what? How's that going to work? Have they told you about that?
It's a good question. There is no formal government involvement that I've been made aware of. It is simply, the best way I can describe it, which is the way I've told it on the website, is it's a reintroduction of old friends and family. You know, let's say that you have an Uncle Ken and an Aunt Mary, and they've got kids, and their kids had children, and you haven't seen them in years. That's essentially what this is going to be. We're going to get a chance to meet family and friends that we haven't met in years. And they're doing it this way because they want the introduction to come from them as private citizens of the universe to us as private citizens of the universe. There doesn't need to be an intermediary for you to talk to your Uncle Ken and your Aunt Mary again. Your relatives. Likewise, there doesn't need to be, at least from their perspective, there doesn't need to be a government holding their hand so that they can talk to you, talk to people on the street. It's simply a matter of a reintroduction of old family and friends. So I've asked the question a few times. They're like, no government involvement. We're going to do it. We're not going to cause any ruckus. We're not going to disturb people. We're not going to be a problem. We're simply going to introduce ourselves and make the people of Earth aware of the fact that they're not alone, that we're here, and we're going to have our notes with us. We'll answer as many questions as we can. So very informal, much like our conversation today. Very informal.
Well, just in the remaining minute or so, Tolec, you've really raised, an enormous number of questions. What thought? No, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
Thoughts, sort of activated neurons that have not been activated for a while, say in our lifetimes, because of circumstances on this planet. What sort of parting insights would you like to leave our audience with between now and our next interview?
Wow. There are probably other people that could say it better than I do. There are three people that I quote on the tail end of the website. Page 5 really has nothing that's specifically relevant to the Andromeda Council, and I initially created this page because I wanted to bring together where we are at as a race. And essentially the thought is, how can we weather the changes that are coming to this planet? How can we be better to each other? And the overriding answer is the same answer that it's the way that they've treated me. In all of my conversations with them, it's always, and some of them are actually very lighthearted, they're actually a lot of fun. It's always about love, care, mutual respect, treating people with kindness. And these three guys that I quote on page 5, Jerry Wills, a gentleman from Germany called Alare. How can people make changes? It's about loving each other and caring about each other. And I'm not talking about in some mushy New Age fashion, but simply in being kind to other people and helping people when you have the opportunity to do it. It's nothing greater than that, simply just being a loving, caring person. That's the best thing that they've taught me, is the best thing we can do today, tomorrow, and the future is to care about each other and love each other. It's that simple.
Well, thank you. And we look forward to our next interview with you, Tolec.
Alfred, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking toward our next conversation. I hope that I answered your questions with the kind of depth you were looking for.
Well, I think that all of the information is there, and we'll be providing even more context in an Examiner article that'll be accompanying this interview and all of the subsequent ones.
Yeah, and it sounds like it spurred more questions for next time as well.
Exactly.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a wonderful time.
All right, thanks again. Take care.
Good enough.
All right, bye-bye.